Hello Internet, my name is Termite, and after this it's not all going to be about me. So, it's November 11th, and if you didn't know, it's Veterans Day, or Armistice Day as they used to call it. On November 11th, 1918, they signed the Armistice, ending World War I. And a lot of different countries celebrate it in different ways or call it different things, but it's all pretty much become just an honoring of veterans and their service. And it just so happens that I have a piece to show you about veterans, or more specifically a Veterans Memorial, the Korean War Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. It's doesn't have the same kind of recognition of the Vietnam Memorial, which is just that very simple black wall. But all the same, I think it gets more visitors because people are drawn to it a little more. Now, I don't have the full story about how this project got started, but as I understand it, my documentary teacher was approached by the Park Service and was asked to do a documentary on the Korean War Veterans Memorial. Because they had one and they sold it in their gift shops, but it sucked. So they wanted a new one made, and for reasons I cannot fathom, they went to a school. I don't want to take up too much time because it is a little bit of a long piece, and if I'm on YouTube now, they got a 15-minute limit, and I want to stay underneath that. So let's get started. Funny thing about this project is we were doing it for the Park Service, and we had assumed, like, for pretty much the entire thing that we would have their cooperation. Thing is, the Park Service is very hard to work with. If you want to film in D.C. on one of the national parks, or actually on one of the monuments, you have to get the Park Service permission because it's their land. So for anything more than just a handheld camera, we needed a permit, and it is very hard to get one. And by the time we got one, it was raining on that day. So that pretty much meant all we had to work with was stock footage, and handheld camera, and still photographs. We did, however, get to interview the architect, and the president of the advisory board was pretty much helping us all the way, getting us contacts and everything, and he was a huge help. It was more of a side support role, and later, because unfortunately, I didn't have enough of a role on this piece, so I created my own edit for my demo reel. What you're about to see is actually my edit. It is not the edit we did for the class, nor is it the final piece we were going to do for the Park Service. That full length, like 1 hour piece, that's still in production. They're still working on getting interviews together. I have not been attached to that because I had to, graduate. Curtis, who you will remember from Chap Where's My Car, the guy with the mustache, he took producer role on this, and he worked both close with Ed, the president of the advisory board, and coordinated a whole bunch of stuff. And my good friend Eden was director. I don't quite remember everyone's roles. They'll all be in the credits at the end of the piece. And because it's got a little more mournful tone, so I'm not going to end this piece with my face. Instead, I'm just going to let the piece run out. So, since I've got nothing else, I can't think of anything else to say about the piece, let's go ahead and roll it. But before we roll it, remember you can email me, holdyourshoe@termitestudios.com. Keep watching this blog, holdyourshoe.com, and you remember my personal website, termitestudios.com. That's always up and running. So with that all out of the way, let's go ahead and roll the piece, and next time I see you, I'll have someone else on to show their work.
Imagine being a soldier thousands of miles from home, defending a country that is not your own. The cold is bone-chilling, the enemy is endless. You are ill-equipped, the mission is unclear. You are told you will be home by Christmas, but that will not be. It is 1950 and you are in the middle of a power struggle between the President of the United States and the most famous general in American history. You are a Korean War soldier, one of America's forgotten heroes. Now learn the story behind the memorial built to honor all who served. Our nation honors her sons and daughters who answered the call to defend a country they never knew and a people they never met. In 1950, America and the United Nations entered into one of the least well-understood wars in modern history. Although tens of thousands of Americans perished, this war went largely unnoticed by future generations until a process that began in 1986 with the presidential appointment of a 12-member Korean War Veterans Memorial Advisory Board and culminated with its dedication in 1995. This is the story of the many people and organizations that were responsible for bringing the memorial to life. The Korean War Veterans Memorial rests on sacred ground near the Lincoln Memorial and Vietnam Veterans Memorial on the National Mall in Washington, D.C.
You know, the Korean War is not well understood, and the questions I get from school children, and unless they've read some history, or a lot of people that have had veterans that were fathers or grandfathers or uncles, and they want to know about the war. They say, why did this war start? And we have to explain to them, started by North Korea, backed by Russia, who wanted to take back South Korea and under a communist state.
The Korean War began June 25, 1950, and ended on July 27, 1953. During these 38 months, more than 54,000 American troops died, and 500,000 South Korean and United Nations troops perished. 33 years after the war, Congress authorized the creation of the Korean War Veterans Memorial.
So the two of us wrote up a request to the Congress for a memorial on the mall for the Korean War veterans. And we the Vietnam War wall was up, dedicated, and popular, and here we were, sandwiched in between Vietnam and World War II, and we really didn't have anything. And yet we had tremendous casualties and great loss of American life in that war. So we decided that we would just write up a request to the Congress. We printed it up and we appeared and testified. And we requested a Korean War memorial on the mall.
The Korean War Veterans Memorial has 5 distinct parts that, viewed together, create a powerful, unified whole that honors all who served. This is a Veterans Memorial, not a war memorial. As you approach the memorial, you see the field of service, the 19 statues in combat formation emerging from the woods. To the left of the field of service is the United Nations curb, which lists all 22 countries who participated in the war. Directly in front of the field of service statues is the Pool of Remembrance, which honors the dead, the missing, and the wounded. Next to the Pool of Remembrance is a large granite wall engraved with "Freedom is not free." Finally, the mural wall rests to the right of the field of service.
One of the requests from the American Battle Monuments Commission was that we honored all the support forces, and most people don't realize I think it was, I can't remember, it was 17 or 19 support people for every one guy in the field. So the idea came to us to create this wall.
The wall is constructed of 41 panels of granite, measures 164 feet in length, and ranges from 4 to 11 feet in height.
It's interesting, the granite that we used on Vietnam came from India and was largely selected for both political reasons and to get an absolute black granite that was a highly reflective surface. In this case, we wanted to not use the same granite. We wanted a slightly lighter black-gray granite, and we wanted it to be from the U.S.
The granite was transported from California to Minnesota, where it was cut and engraved.
We had a few test panels made in Minnesota, flew out there and looked at them and brought them outside, and they were covered with dust from the blasting and being in this plant. And we said, can we clean off the panels? And one of the workmen went and got a cup of water and a rag and poured the water across the top and wiped the panel, and it was, so big. And all the etching disappeared. And then in about 3 minutes, this was sitting out in the sun, these faces slowly began to emerge out of the stone in this kind of almost magical experience. And we were all, just caught our breath. It was just amazing.
All branches of service are represented on this wall, as are all the support staff that allow the infantrymen in the field to operate.
There are 2,400 pictures of the GIs in Korea between 50 and 53, and we call that the support wall, because it takes 15 people to support, or more, to support an infantryman in the field. And on that wall are the naval ships and the air and the supply lines and the doctors and nurses and the chaplains and everything to support that guy in the field. That's the support wall. These people were taken at random from the Defense Department files. They're actual photos.
The idea was, from a distance, when you looked at the field of service, the 19 guys, that this wall would appear to have lightly etched snow-capped mountains in the background. And it sort of gives you that impression until you really get up and walk down the other leg of the triangle and suddenly realize these are not mountains.
We've had people come back and find themselves when they were 19 and 20 years old on the wall. And today they're, late 70s. And I think we've had about, maybe 10 come back. And that's been a very wonderful experience for everybody.
Some of the faces in the wall are very apparent and identifiable, but a lot of people believe they have seen themselves in the wall. And whether it's true or not, I always encourage them to believe that it is that.
Now, almost 60 years after the Korean War began, a memorial stands to honor all who served, and to act as a reminder of the profound cost of the liberty that we have as American citizens. Freedom is not free.